Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. As always, we are coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everyone. So, good news that Hurricane Isaias, I believe it was, don't quote me, I always get the names wrong. If you know me well, I get names wrong a lot. But I think the hurricane dissipated, which was good because it was a total bust. I think we need a break from hurricanes down here for a little while. You know, with everything going on and everything being so chaotic in 2020, I think it, needs a break for the rest of the year. So, luckily there was no damage. I know it's a tropical storm up north near North Carolina and Virginia, I believe, at this proper time, but yeah, it missed us, and so I'm thankful, and hopefully wherever it goes, hopefully all it does is do a lot of rain like it did here. So I want to make a quick announcement about our clothes drive coming up for the homeless. It will be next weekend, not this weekend. We were planning on doing it this weekend, but I figured we'd push it off till next weekend. And so if you guys still want to donate clothes, we collect shoes, blankets, clothes, and of course money. Make donations at our GoFundMe account, and also we are taking applications for volunteers as well. So please apply today. Go to facebook.com/spirit communities and look up for the volunteer, and we'd love to have you help us and help the homeless in the Tri-County area. So all right, guys, this week, actually, hold on one second, I want to make an announcement really quick. This week we will have the old commercial for the Life of Raina with the new logo with the I Am Evolution. So I know it's kind of conflicting, but next week, right now we're in the process of having someone redo our commercial and everything with the updated. So everything's going to be switching over to the I Am Evolution, and Life of Raina will be no more as of next week. So just the phone number and the email address will work up until we get the new commercial next week, and then as of next week, everything will be switching over to the new phone numbers, the new email addresses, and everything else. So if you still want to contact us, you can contact us at the Transcendental, but we're going to have the new numbers and everything up next week. So hopefully, I'm excited for it too. So, all right, guys, don't forget to catch us live on Facebook Live right now, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. Caleb is sitting around listening in for the Facebook Live and the YouTube and the Twitch. And if you want to live chat us, please ask him your questions. He'll relay the questions to me, and we would love to hear from you. So also, don't forget that the replays will be on our website, soulandspiritguide.com, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitchers, and Google Podcasts. So we are expanding all over the place. So the first thing I want to ask everybody is, how many of us allow our emotions to control us? And I really want you to think about that before you answer, before you kind of dismiss it. How many of us really allow our emotions to control us? How many of us allow our emotions to dictate our life? They dictate our relationships, they dictate our jobs, they dictate our friendships, they dictate everything. I mean, just even basically every constant moment in our lives. for many of us, we call ourselves, we're empathic, or we're sensitives, or, or we have some type of connection, some spiritual connection, or humanitarian connection to maybe the earth or to other people. And for a lot of us, we say we feel deeply. And because of that, it kind of seems like our emotions dictate ourselves. And because we don't really know how to control the empathetic or the energetic levels of our bodies. And so a lot of times what we end up doing is we end up sabotaging ourselves through emotions. And a lot of times when we look at things and we say, well, you know what, every day we wake up, do we really have an understanding of how emotional of a person we have become? Because for many of us, we don't have that understanding. For many of us, we don't have the awareness that our lives are dictated every single moment by our emotions. And so we allow our emotions to sabotage ourselves, and we allow our emotions to sabotage our relationships, our friendships, our job. And so if you're one of those that seems like we're constantly fighting on social media, we're constantly fighting with other people, people are always screwing us over, or we're always bouncing from job to job, or whatever. These are signs that we are ruled by our emotions. And a lot of times, we sit there and we say, well, I don't feel like, I feel maybe angry at times, but I have happiness and I'm joyful and all this stuff. But really, do we really break down the ideas of our emotions? And I know we're going to get into emotions, and this is part 1 of 3 series of everything. But a lot of times, we lose our jobs, we lose relationships. I mean, I know even in my own personal experiences, I've lost a relationship or two because of emotional chaos. Because a lot of times we don't realize how emotionally undone we've become. And that's okay. That is okay if we've become in a place where our emotions have taken control of us. And because we don't understand what it is that's going on. And tonight we're going to get into all the bells and whistles of emotions, at least anger and fear, because I really wanted to break down, the 6 major emotions. And even though I'm going to say this over and over that emotions aren't real, and we're going to break down why they're not real and why they are what they really are, and so we don't use the emotions to dictate our life, that we use the emotions or the energies that we call emotions to actually process life and the way we need to go. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're looking for these answers and you just can't seem to if you can't seem to rake in your emotions, and you just constantly feel like an emotional mess, well, then I really hope that you stay with us for all 3 parts of this series and stuff, because you are going to learn a lot about this. And of course, this isn't going to be a fix-all and a cure-all for everything like that, because it takes work for us to heal and to go through and process these ideas that we're going to talk about today. So again, this is a 3-part series. The first tonight is anger and fear. Next week is going to be happiness and grief, and then the third week is going to be worry and pensiveness. So we're going to be discussing the repercussions of emotions, because like as I said, our emotions will a lot of times have repercussions in our relationships, our lifestyle, and even our perception of life. And I'm going to tell you one fact right now, is that if we're going through an emotional state, or we're constantly living in an emotional state, our perception of life is skewed. And a lot of times we don't realize that we have become so skewed, because when we live in a certain state for so long, it becomes our normal. And when something becomes our normal, we don't see any other way other than the perception that we're seeing. And so it becomes the norm to us. And so it is hard for us to see other perspectives. It is hard for us to see anything else other than what we're experiencing. And for a lot of us, we believe that this is the way life has to be, but it's not. And so I want us to really take note that perception is really going to change when we retrain ourselves, and we retrain our ideas, and we retrain our thought process and what we call emotions. Because when we break down emotional meanings and we break down the emotion, is basically what happens is emotions are nothing more than energies that we use to transfer or to analyze data that is through us. And so what does that mean? That means that when we're having an experience, we use this thing called emotions to analyze the data that is coming through. So if we're having an experience with someone or something or whatever it is, and that there's energy and information coming from that source into us, and how we understand it is through this what we call emotions. And so the emotions, we feel energy, we read energy, and the emotions tell us, based on our past experience or based on new experience, how we're going to interact with that information. And this is why so many of us have a hard time, and why we become so emotionally reactive, why we become the victim of our own life, and why we don't see the ideas that is happening, because we don't understand the information that's coming to us. So tonight we're going to learn a little bit of how to understand, how to release, how to live life in your truth and in truth, because there's a difference between your truth and actual truth. And so I know a lot of times we sit there and we'll sit there and say, well, my truth is the truth, and that, but that's the skewed part of the emotions and stuff. And so we're gonna try to teach you and to understand how to take out this emotion and how to understand it as almost like as if we're translating something, because that's all we're really doing when we're coming into emotions. So we're not ruled by it, is we're translating the information that is coming to us, because as I said, emotions are not real. And I know that is the hardest thing for most people to understand, is because we have been taught that we have emotions and we live in emotions, and emotions do this and emotions do that. And yes, the experience behind the emotions is real. But emotions are nothing more than how we process the data that is coming to us. And so if we perceive something, if we have, if we live in the ideas of Miss Raina's no-nos, good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, because we know there's no such thing as those, then those no-nos will translate into, the emotional chaos, because we don't understand how to process something, because we are in judgment of something. And so if we're judging something, then what ends up happening, especially based on our past experience, is we sit there and we will attach an emotion to something that we do not understand. And so it really is our body's way of processing the experience. And so I really want you to understand that emotions are the way that the body and the soul processes the experience, and they're nothing more. So it translates into an emotion, and we view our lives, we view our emotions, or we view our experiences by what emotions we become attached to. And how many of us live on an angry basis? How many of us fight on social media? How many of us go on Facebook every day and constantly post hateful stuff about politics, or laugh at somebody else, or constantly are calling people stupid, and and we're really we get annoyed by people who cut us off in driving, or people who screw us over in some way, shape, or form. And so we become attached to this idea of emotion, because that's how we're trying to figure out how we're processing the information. So the brain is trying to associate, and the soul is trying, because remember, there's a difference between the spirit, the soul, and the body, and they all process different information differently. And because our soul is kind of is lack for a better word, we're kind of dumb when it comes to that, because our minds get wiped, and that we don't understand. It's like relearning how to understand the experiences all over. And what's sad in life today is that we don't get taught emotions. We don't get taught experiences. We don't get taught how to deal with life experiences. And this is why so many of us are in so much chaos today, is because we don't have the knowledge or the experience. You know how to do math, you know how to do English, you know how to do social studies and psychology and whatever subjects you took, but you don't know how to live. And the most important thing in life is learning how to live. And this is why so many of us have a problem with life. This is why so many of us are in survival. Imagine right now that if you live on if you live on an angry and a fearful type of way, and that you're in survival mode all the time. You're in defense. You are constantly defensive of everything going around you, which is why you take things so personally. And fear and anger go hand in hand, and because there is not anger without fear. And the reason why that is because fear gives us the unknown. When we live a life in fear and anger, we become disconnected. We become turbulent and chaotic. And in that moment, we don't have the knowledge or the understanding of what it is we're trying to process. And so when when we become fearful of something, it's because we don't have the information. And that will eventually turn to anger. Because what is our body's response? Is to defend itself. We have to learn. We defend ourselves into any situation, and we don't even realize it. And that's the reason why so many of us who live in anger and fear, we always have to be right about something. Everybody, is wrong. We're right. Our opinions are right. What we say is right. And it's because we're trying to survive. We're trying to manipulate our ego into something that it's not. And a lot of times we have that. And so many of us who live in fear and anger are disconnected on a daily basis. We don't have that connection. We feel lost. And I know for many of you spiritual people, the number one thing that I hear with all of you is that I feel I don't fit in. I feel that, like no one understands me. I feel that nobody understands who I am and gets me. And of course you're going to feel like that because you don't know who you are, because you live in fear and anger. And so our lives become turbulent. We reject those that reject us, and even we reject ideas that are meant to help us. And so many of us understand that. And even if you're not a spiritualist, maybe you're religious or whatever and you're watching this show, or not even at all, maybe you're atheist or whoever, and that fear and anger still play the same part. It doesn't matter what your belief system is, because fear and anger all get processed through the mind the same way, and through the soul, through the body, the same exact way. So fear is nothing more than a resistance to it's a resistance to any reaction, any response of information that we do not understand. And that's the first thing that we have to understand, is when I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know what, I feel fear right now. The first thing I have to understand is I don't understand what's going on. And in that moment, and we'll get into how we're going to fix this a little bit later, but in that moment, I start to become less afraid because I'm understanding the emotional and mental response that my body and my soul are going through. And for many of us, we don't give ourselves that chance. We become emotionally reactive because we become judgmental. When we don't understand something, how many of us, and I want you to ask yourselves this, and I want you to answer this truthfully. Really be honest with yourself, because there's no one with you but you right now. How many of us, when someone says something new or something that we don't understand, we judge it? How many of us we either make a smirk at them, or we instantly reject it, or our mind instantly says, no, that's not right. This is the way it is, and this is the way. But you know what the thing is that we've been taught so many lies over our in society, over our life, that it's hard to know what is true anymore. And that's the really big kicker, isn't it? That's why we're really angry. That's why we're really in fear, is because deep down, you know that 99.9% of what we've been taught in society is a lie. Because honestly, it is the human's best guess at what's going on to make sense. But in reality, nobody knows really what they're doing. And so we've been brought up to believe in certain things. We've been brought up to have certain morals and ethics and all these different ideas. But they're all judgments. And they may not fit you. And that makes you angry. That makes you fearful. Because, hey, if I'm different than this, then, hey, I'm going to get laughed at. You know what? I've been laughed at my whole life. I have been constantly told that I would never amount to anything. I've been constantly told that I'm a loser. I've been constantly made fun of for the way I sound, for the way I dress. I mean, people tell me all sorts of stuff. Even the work that I do today. And that people always, there's always got somebody to say, because it's in judgment, because there's information that they cannot understand. And even if you don't understand the information, it is so important for you to understand, to not jump into fear. But we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and yes, it's supposed to be next week. It'll be I Am Evolution, and you know what? I might have a hard time switching over to that, because I have said the Life of Raina for so long that I'll probably have to put in big capital letters on my notes to make sure you say I Am Evolution. Because it's hard to switch over after a while, you know. Even my brain gets trained and conditioned sometimes. So, all right, guys. So, yes, so it is in judgment. And so when we look at anger, we look at fear, we have to realize that it is the resistance to limited information. Any information that we don't understand, our first response is fear. Our second response is anger. And because why do we get angry? Is because our ego gets offended. We don't like it. Our ego says, wait a minute, that's not what I was taught. I wasn't taught this. So we get offended right away. And then we become angry, because now that means if this information is correct, that means that what I've learned has been taken from me. And who am I? What am I about? If what I believed was wrong, and you see how it goes, and then our mind and our ego unravel. And so we have to learn not to take things personally. And so, you know, people ask me, well, where does, like, as far as the brain, like, where does fear start? Well, it starts in the amygdala. The amygdala is part of the limbic system, and the amygdala gets triggered by the hypothalamus. And so when you sit there and you have an experience, that information is being triggered into your brain. And after the amygdala gets triggered, then what ends up happening is it activates the pituitary gland. And so the pituitary gland, if you're not familiar, it's where the nervous system and the endocrine system meet. And so HCTH is released. And so, well, into the bloodstream. And so what that causes is it causes the sympathetic nervous system to be activated. And when that becomes activated, then the adrenaline is released, the epinephrine, and we have cortisol, and all of a sudden we're in fight or flight mode. And what do you think happens in fight or flight? We become survivalists. We are in survival mode. And this is why I told you earlier that yes, you live in a survival mode every single day. That's why you're always tired. That's why you're always nervous. That's why your heart is racing all the time, because you view the world as your enemy. You view everybody else as your enemy. You even view you as your own enemy. And that's the hardest thing. How can we be happy? How can we enjoy life? How can we experience anything else in life if we're in fight or flight mode? If we're constantly having adrenaline and cortisol and epinephrine and all this stuff going through our body, how can we constantly have that? We can't, because the survival mechanism in our brain keeps us safe, because we view everything as bad for us. And that is why Miss Raina's no-nos of there is no good or bad is so important, because it is not good or bad. Life is not good or bad. It is not right or wrong. It is not these things that we believe in. But because we have been taught those ideas, this sets us up for anger and fear. And what happens when we become angry and fearful is we have the idea that we fail. And of course we're going to fail at something because we already project that we're going to fail. This is why self-esteem is so very low in our world today. This is why self-confidence and self-worth and all these ideas, self-love and compassion and understanding for others are not prevalent in our world today, because we have this idea of failure and we try so hard to be successful that we're willing to stomp over anything and anyone to get there, to prove ourselves that we're not afraid and we're not angry. But it's in those very moments of understanding that we understand that we are afraid of failure, that we are afraid of success, and we are living in fear and anger. So, you have to learn to let that stuff go. You have to learn to be able to understand that, because the need to be right or wrong, or the need, I should say, to be right over right or wrong, or someone who's wrong, and that it just creates more anger. Because you can't, when you're trying to prove yourself in flight or fight mode, it is impossible, because the prefrontal cortex is shut off. When you become angry, when you become fearful, once that amygdala starts going and saying, hey, warning, 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 the prefrontal cortex shuts off. That's rational thinking. You can no longer think straight. You can no longer think with a perspective of anything else. And that's what's crazy about it, is so we make all these judgments on information that we don't know, because it blocks us from seeing the truth. If you think that you are in truth and you are angry and fearful, then you are lying to yourself, and we have to disconnect from that. It is okay to be, if you want to say the word wrong, it is okay not to know everything. It is okay not to be successful as far as money-wise, as far as, it is okay to be who you are. The world needs to go round, and you are perfect the way you are. But you don't believe that, and that is why all of this chaos comes to a head. Anger is simple. On a spiritual form, it is one's inability to see any other perspective than its own. And that's simple. That is the plain definition of anger and fear. The inability to see any other perspective other than their own. That is plain and simple. And that is the most basic definition to anger and fear that I can give you on a spiritual level. When you are angry, when you are in a fear, you cannot see any other perspective, because isn't that what life is all about? Isn't that why we have duality? Isn't that why we have come with a yin-yang, or with the light and the dark and the feminine and the masculine, the duality part to make the whole? Is because we're meant to see other perspectives. How can we see another perspective if we're angry, if the only perspective we want to see is our own? And you must learn to let go of that. You must learn to let go of only wanting to see your perspective. Because as long as you think your perspective is right, or the knowledge that you have is correct and everybody else is wrong, you will always live in anger and fear. And one of the things that I've learned, or relearned, I should say, through this life, especially coming from someone of trauma, is anger is often a common response to trauma, because it's the same idea. And that every single one of us has gone through some sort of trauma. We've all been in fights, or we've all been laughed at, we've all been made fun of, we've all been told, mean things to each other. Some of us have had it maybe a little worse. Some of us have had physical abuse or sexual abuse, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to trigger anybody. But trauma and anger go hand in hand, because it's the natural, like I said, it's the natural survival instinct. Push away because it's fear. If you ever watch animals, what do? They don't let people get close. They don't let other animals get close. Why? Because they understand how fast a situation can escalate into something horrific for them, and they could be killed. And so it is the same instinct that we have. When we have experienced trauma, it is because then our mind is constantly in this fight or flight mode. And trauma can be anything. It could be witnessing something. It could be experiencing something. It could be seeing something over and over so much that our brain starts to associate, hey, this is with this. And that is what we call association with emotions. And that, so we'll sit there and we have this idea where every single time, and our media does this to us, every single time we see another country, they want to associate an emotion with it, because they know that no matter what happens, if you see this, it's going to trigger this, because that's social conditioning. And so we make ourselves and life unfair. We've experienced trauma, we see situations that happen, and we say, you know what, life is unfair, and we become the victim. The ego takes over, the victim takes over, and it says, hey, you know what, I'm this person, and you know what, I didn't get my way, I didn't get these things, and because I see all this, all these different ideas and stuff, well, then I'm going to become a victim because I like to be in anger. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is start understanding, start taking a look at yourself. It is the most hardest thing, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, because, how to release it, we'll get in. But I really want you guys to really start taking a good look at yourself. It might be scary at first. You might say, well, my trauma is too hard. No trauma is too hard to get past. I have been through some of the hardest traumas in life experience, and I have been able to overcome them. It wasn't easy. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There was a lot of days that, I really struggled with, but I'm telling you from firsthand experience, I worked through my anger. I worked through my sadness. I worked through my grief. I worked through my worriedness. I worked through my happiness. I worked through all these things called emotions. I've worked through all my trauma. I've worked through all these experiences, and I've come out to a point where you can understand and see things that they're not as bad as we make them out to be. Because once the victim dies, once the survivalist dies, strength comes in. When strength comes in, then you become what you want to be. And that's one of the hardest things for us to learn. And, when, a lot of people, I've been asked as well, a lot of people have a hard time with loss, unresolved loss. And they say, Miss Raina, I'm angry because I can't get over this unexpected loss, whether it's by a loved one, a family member, or a partner, or whoever, a friend. Unresolved loss is hard to get over. I understand that. I see my mom struggling with it. I see a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come through these doors. I see a lot of people struggling it. But that is the same concept. Loss, yes, I miss my father, I miss certain people, my friends that have passed on for me, and that, but I understand what has happened because I don't take it personally. That is one of the things that we have to learn in life, is to start appreciating life for what it is. We can, any one of us, nothing is guaranteed, and yet I know this, but in here we don't. We expect everybody to be a certain way. We expect relationships to be a certain way. We have all these expectations. And when something in life says, this is the way it's going to really be compared to our expectations, that is one of the hardest things. And so loss is hard because we expected something else, like we expected a different result. And so we haven't learned the process. And this is why it is so important for people who live in fear and anger to stop expecting life to be a certain way, or stop expecting other people to act or think or do certain things, because it will always lead to anger and fear because of those ideas. And when that happens, our ego is going to get involved. And when our ego gets involved, what ends up happening is we get into a superiority complex, because we want to equalize with an can't even say it. Never mind. You know what I'm trying to say, complex. And that's my dyslexia right there. So even when I mess up, it is okay. Even live on a show, it is okay, because it doesn't matter. Because I'm confident in who I am. And that just goes to show you that things happen. And so I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm not going to fear, hey, oh my God, you just messed up on live TV or live podcast. Hey, it happens. I couldn't even say the word. I say this word all the time. And for some reason, my dyslexia decides to kick in. But knowing who I am, resolving your ego, and not allowing things to happen, or not allowing things that happen to you to affect you, is what ends up happening. So yes, so if you once your ego gets involved, you're going to go through those complexes, and it's going to lead to anger. And that's the crazy part about it. So when we don't recognize our angry, when we don't recognize that we're angry, I want you to understand that most of us are going to live with it. Most of us are going to always want to be right. Most of us are going to push our belief systems on others. So if you're on social media and you're always pushing your political side on people, or your religious or spiritual side on people, or laughing at people, you have a lot of anger. And that needs to be resolved. And one of the number one things that I see all the time that is a sure statement of anger is when I hear people are stupid. If you utter those words on a constant basis, or whenever you have an interaction and you say people are stupid, that is the surefire way, that is the surefire sign that you are angry. And you know what, and this is the way we live the world. This is the way we start to perceive things. Of course, it's not that you see people as stupid. That's what you really believe about yourself. It's not that you're laughing at other people, you're laughing at yourself. You're not pushing your beliefs on other people. You're trying to establish that you're somebody. And you can be anything you want. You can do anything you want, and you don't have to be that. And so, so one of the things that I always, when I start feeling angry, is I start to disassociate. And what I mean by that is I start to take myself out of the world, and I look at things and I say, well, if I'm viewing the world as angry, if I'm interacting people and I'm angry and they're angry, or I'm getting a lot of anger, and I start to understand, okay, this is going on, then I start to look at how I'm treating myself, how I'm treating others, because I made that post or quote last couple of days, and I said, well, if you're how you treat others and how you treat yourself shows how you feel about yourself, and how you engage in the world is how you feel about yourself. And that is true. So what I end up doing is I take myself out, because I start to say, okay, well, I have to look at these things, I have to break these things down, I have to understand these things. And because when I become angry, I become, and I'm not saying me, but anybody, when people become angry, they become hateful, and they become closed-minded. Remember, we shut down, we stop growing, we start to injure our physical and emotional bodies, and we start to push ourselves into distress. And I know a lot of you understand that so many of us can realize, and science has proven this, that emotions, like especially our anger, even though they don't exist, and I'm going to get into this in a second, and that they injure ourselves, they injure our heart. Too much joy, if you're too happy, people have heart attacks on happiness. Everyone thinks, oh, well, happiness is good, anger is bad, grief is bad, joy is wonderful. But no, it is not that way, because too much of any energy can injure our body any which way. But yes, there has been number of studies, and I'm even proof of having too much stagnant energy, too much of things being repressed from trauma, leading to a medical condition. And so so you have to remember that when you truly love yourself and you're truly moving on to something, that you really have to start taking care of yourself. And that doesn't just mean diet and exercise. What I mean is it has to change your perspective of that. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190 or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. I had to take a break because my dyslexia was really getting to me at the time. And that's okay, people. And see, so no matter how, no matter what we do, we all make mistakes. We all have things that we have to work through. And you know what? I am proud to have dyslexia. I am proud to be able to, it doesn't always work in my favor, but that is okay. I don't, it has helped me in so many ways. It has helped me understand things. And every once in a while, I can't speak or I can't read, properly, but that is okay because when I do, I just take a short little break. I reset my mind, and things change back. So don't let situations in your life that that happen to you dictate your life. Don't let them become you. Don't let them try to mold you into something you're not. So because we become emotionally reactive, and when we become emotionally reactive, and I'm guilty of that. I am a very passionate person, and especially when I was going through an angry period just up until a few years ago, I became always this nervous, and my anxiety would do it, my mood would change, and I would get very irritated at things, and my OCD would even become more exaggerated, and then I would get moody because things weren't being done the way I wanted them to, and it snowballed into that type of idea. And I know a lot of you will sit there and say, oh yes, I get angry and I just do things myself because I don't have faith that other people are going to do them like me. And that is what we get ourselves in trouble because, as long as we become in those states of mind, as long as we're constantly in the sympathetic nervous system, as long as we're in that type of fight or flight mindset, we're just going to be emotionally reactive. We're not really living. We're not going to be able to do this. And, what kind of life is that? I know for you people who live in anger and fear, you deal with restless sleep, you deal with a lot of chronic pain, you deal with fatigue, you deal with tightness in your chest, tightness in your neck, you're constantly stressed out. For you to sit and relax, a massage sometimes even hurts because you're so tight and wound up, and you're so turned into that type of person that it's hard for you to let go. And you deserve to let go. You deserve to you deserve to have to be able to let go of that stress and tightness, and just to be able to enjoy life. And a lot of people, and that's the reason why a lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol, is they turn to drugs and alcohol because it gives them a break. I was doing it for a long time in my life. I just, between the spiritual stuff and between a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with, the unresolved emotions from my past and the trauma and all the stuff that was going on, I turned to drugs and alcohol as well because it gave me a break, but it wasn't doing anything. I just wanted more and more, and I just started to take a path that I really didn't want to go down. And so a lot of times we have to, when we're angry and we're fear, we push others away because we view them, like I said, as the enemy, and we accept things like drugs and alcohol and fighting, and everywhere we go is just kind of like this always battle, this emotional battle of superiority, of just trying to fight with one another to establish dominance. And a lot of times it becomes obsessive, it becomes violent, and that's why a lot of people who are good, solid people become violent, or their anger builds up so much that they become super obsessive over things. And if somebody just doesn't get it right, or somebody does something, they snap like that and become violent. And then they look at themselves and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got like that. And I know that if you've gotten to one of those people that have become violent at times for no reason, and you're not that type of person, then this is something that we have to work on. And the exact opposite sometimes happen too, where we become very depressive as well. But our self-esteem has hit zero. It's hit flat out bottom, and we have to learn to understand what it is our life is going. So I know we have like 15 minutes, and I have a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get over. But you know what? I think that what I'm gonna start doing is just telling about like how we can start working through some of this stuff. So why is anger so important for us? Why is this emotion that we call anger, even though it's not real, why is this emotion important? Well, because it teaches us to understand who we are. It helps us to learn. It helps us to learn to love. It helps us to learn to love who we are, learn to love and accept other people, and to learn to accept the situations that are at hand. So it teaches us to learn to accept the world around us. And I know for some of you that are angry, that are going to be like, well, how does that accept anger? Anger is the exact opposite of happiness, right? It's the polar opposite. So it shows us the yin to the yang, right? And that's the male or the female, or I should say masculine to the feminine energy, right? Or the light to the dark. And so it's not bad. Anger is not bad. Happiness is not good. They are just what they are. They are a way for us to understand the world around us. So anger helps us learn to appreciate love, to appreciate the things that we have in our lives. Because when we're angry, do you really appreciate everything? No. Everything sucks. The world sucks. The people sucks. You just live. Every day repeats, almost like Groundhog's Day. And I know a lot of you that are my age or older understand that reference. But that's true. And so we can't appreciate those things. We can't find happy relationships. And when we finally find the relationship that we do, it's because we work through our anger. We've worked through our fear to allow us to have that. And so if we're in a miserable relationship, it's because we're not allowing ourselves to work through our anger and our fear to appreciate what we have. And maybe what we have, we don't need. And a lot of times we do. So use your anger to start looking at things objectively. Look at things in perspective. Say, okay, well, I'm angry about this and I'm angry about that. And start to understand the world around you. Start to understand what it is that's making you angry. Because as long as you continue to not deal with anger and fear, you're never going to find appreciation for life. And you cannot find any appreciation or perspective, because remember, as long as you're in anger, you only see one perspective. As long as you don't have that appreciation, this is your life. And so when I asked you, how do you feel about your life? How do you feel about these type of ideas that dictate our lives, that dictate our emotions? If you are going through life adrift, and you are going through, and you're just, and every day feels like the same day over and over, just, doing different things here and there, you got to start asking yourself, when are you going to make it worth it to start working on yourself? You got to stop playing the victim. You got to stop playing with the ego and start understanding. And so when we start living our lives without anger and fear, honestly, people ask me, well, what is it like, Miss Raina? Well, I can't answer that for you because every person is different. Every experience is different. But I always say, the possibilities to your life are endless. When I was living in anger and fear and that, it was always chaotic. I would always be around people that didn't appreciate me, people that said that they were my friends but really weren't, people that always took advantage of me. Whenever I'd go out, they'd always get my order wrong. People would always cut me off in the cars, and things would always go kind of crazy, and I would start getting worked up because my anxiety would trigger my fear would trigger my anger, and it was this endless loop. And when I released all that, it was like it was just like it was a whole different world that is hard to explain. And I just felt so open to everything that everything just all of a sudden possibilities were endless to me. I've always been a confident person, but my confidence even grew even more. I was more sure of myself. I wanted to go out and explore life instead of being victimized and saying, oh, the world's going to hurt me and being, hiding in my little dome here and everything like that. I started wanting to go out. I started wanting to talk to people. My personality came out and I wanted to explore life. I wanted to travel again. I wanted to do all these things. And the most important thing is that I wasn't judgmental towards people. When people were reactive to me, I was just, okay, it is what it is. And that's the wonderful feeling, is not being a reactive to people who are reactive to you, because now you understand why they're in anger, why they're in suffering, and instead of jumping at them and screaming at them to fight with dominance, you become a person of compassion and love. And this happened to me the other day. I was going to pick up some food, and I was turning. We were in like a parking lot, and I was turning, and this one girl wasn't paying attention, and she just turns without stopping at the stop sign and cuts me off, and I almost slammed into the side of her. And she looked at me, and I just went, okay. I said, okay, and I sat. And she just gave me this really hard stare, like she was trying to stare me down. And then she stops the car, and she starts trying to play with me. And I said, okay, well, obviously, this girl is upset. And so I parked the car, and I just sat there, and I had no emotional reaction to it. It didn't bother me. And we sat there for probably a good maybe 3-4 minutes. And then she realized that I wasn't engaging in her anymore. I wasn't going to engage at all, that she wasn't getting an emotional response out of it. And because she wasn't getting that response from me, she ended up leaving. There was no confrontation. There was nothing. She became emotionally reactive because she's in anger and because she was trying to prove a point to me, even though she violated the driving code or whatever you want to say. But it could have gone so much worse if I was angry. And so we have to look at that. We have to understand that. And so the first thing I want you guys to do is to admit that you're angry. Say, I am angry. I am fearful. And ask yourselves why you are angry. Why am I angry? If I'm feeling anger right now, why am I angry? Well, I'm angry because somebody did this to me. And I feel that and allow yourself to become egotistical. And what I mean by that is allow your ego to take over for just a second and say, well, I'm angry because this person said this to me and I don't feel that was right. And allow yourself to express what it is you're angry about. But you got to be honest with it. You got to say, I am angry, and truly admit that you are angry, and truly admit, well, why am I angry? Why am I afraid of? And allow yourself to become the victim for only in a short time. I always allow myself one day or one evening, and it used to be a lot longer. Before, it used to be a week or 3-4 days, and that when I was really trying to work things out years ago. But now it is only one day, sometimes even several hours, and that if something really offends me. So when I had a situation with my family in Chicago this past time that was, with my sister, that she said some things that were really hurtful to me, I allowed myself to hurt because it was my sister who I cared about that said some really mean things. Now I know that she was just saying that because her anger, that was her way of trying to establish dominance, because she's in a painful and an angry life right now. And that is such a hard life to live. When someone is angry and fearful, and someone is full and lives a life like that, you gotta have compassion for them, because that is one of the worst punishments that they live. And I don't want to say punishment as they're being punished by a god or goddess, because that's just not true. But they're punishing themselves because they don't have to live like that. So you have to have compassion. But I still was hurt because that was my sister being like that. And so I said, okay, I'm allowing myself to feel pain. I'm allowing myself to feel hurt. I went upstairs and I locked myself in the room and I watched TV and I cried for one evening. And as I was crying, I allowed it to become full force, and I broke down the situation in my mind, and I said, okay, well, right now I'm taking it personally because it was my sister and it was so unexpected, and I allowed, but what actually happened? What actually transpired? And I broke down the whole situation, and then I was able to understand, because remember, I removed my anger because I wanted to see another perspective. So I needed to see my sister's perspective, I needed to see my perspective, I needed to see my family's perspective and other perspectives that were around, and I had to break it down. And I say, okay, I'm not going to take it personally. What was the situation that happened? What was her feelings? What was my feelings? What was other people's feelings? And how did this situation really come ahead? And when I did that and I saw from other perspectives, I realized, you know what? That in her perspective, something I said was taken personally because of her experiences, and because they were unresolved. she thought she was being attacked, because remember, when you're in fight or flight mode, when someone says something, your perspective is skewed, and then you will take it personally because you say, oh my god, this person's attacking me. And that's the way it went. And so I said, okay, I know I wasn't being that way, but I had to honor my sister because that's the way she felt. I had to honor myself because that's the way I felt, and I had to honor the situation for what it really was. And we were able to resolve it. We were able to move on, or at least I was, and no more anger, no more situation, and it was done. And that can be done with every situation, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's passion. No matter how deeply rooted your situations are, it can be broken down like that. And it sounds so easy. It does. It takes a lot of work, but it sounds so easy. And even Caleb said that. He's like, you make it sound like it's a piece of cake and it's snap. Yes, it does turn into that. It turns into, after doing it for so long and finding out how it works with you, it breaks down that quickly, so fast, so quickly. But as long as you see yourself as a victim, as long as you see yourself in survivor mode, and that you're never going to get past trying to see somebody else's perspective, because it's always, they did this to me, they're doing this, the world's against me, I can't do it. You know what? You can't change your past. You can't. So accept it. You can't change the things that happen to you, and you can't change certain things that are going to happen to you. So don't worry about it. And we're going to get into worry and pensiveness 2 weeks from now. But you know what, guys? Learn to let things go. Learn to let ideas go, and realize that even if someone's screaming at you and being mean to you, it's not personal. It is about them. It is not about you. And when you become a person about who you are, and a person of understanding and compassion, and a person of perspective, then there's no more anger, there's no more fear, because you realize that the frequency, the data that's coming at you, you process it the way it is, and emotion goes away. So, all right, guys, I think that's it for tonight. I always used to have my little board out beforehand, but you know how it goes. And but all right, guys, if you guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed tonight's show. If you guys have any questions, hopefully Caleb was answering them for you. If not, you can always email us at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com. Make sure you look at our Facebook page and subscribe at facebook.com/transcendental transformation. Our YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com, and make sure you sign up for the newsletter to receive special hidden shows and VIP access to guests when we have them on. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.